This is where we keep you up to speed with the economics of the coronavirus pandemic. Today on the program, we will be looking at macroeconomics, talking about Nigeria. I was just saying earlier, perhaps if Nigeria depended not only on oil, we would have been in a better state. For example, if we harness what we have so much in agriculture, beyond even rice, we'll be in better state. Cocoa, for example, palm oil's price is higher than crude oil price by far. So you can imagine that if we're doing that. Anyway, let me just hold my fire so that during the interview, my guest will be giving us more perspectives on that. Dr. Olusegun Omisakin will be joining me today. He is the chief economist at the Nigerian Economic Summit Group. So we'll be looking at that. Don't also forget that last week, yes, or some days ago, the National Bureau of Statistics said that Nigerians spent about 40 trillion naira on household expenditure. As Nigerians, we spent 23 trillion naira on food between October of 2018 and September of 2019. That's a year interval. And most of what we spent went to food outside home, 150 billion naira on alcohol. That's alcoholic drinks. We'll be giving you more details on that. What I would like you to tell me this morning is what you spend money on. Do you spend money on more on food items or non-food items? For Lagos, for example, Lagosians spend more money on non-food items than food items. So we're breaking all of that down, as well as the poverty rate as released by the National Bureau of Statistics. 4 in 10 Nigerians live below the poverty line right now. Will COVID-19 disease, will it worsen it? Will it worsen it? So that's the show today. That's what we'll be looking at. So you can follow us on all our social media platforms. The addresses are coming up right now on the screen. Let's quickly tell you what stories we are following for you. Others are the National Bureau of Statistics in its petroleum products imports and consumption statistics report for 2019 says Nigeria imported 20.89 billion liters of petrol in 2019. The report also stated that a total of 5.15 billion liters of automotive gas oil imported during the period under review. Other products imported include 128.11 million liters of household kerosene, 1.07 billion liters of aviation turbine kerosene, 45.98 million liters of low-pour fuel oil, and 526.06 million liters of liquefied petroleum gas. Meanwhile, the Federal Executive Council on Wednesday approved 2.9 billion naira for the provision of water and fire service equipment in the National Oil and Gas Park to be sited in Odumpani, Cross River States. The Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, Temipere Silva, says the project, when completed, will provide additional infrastructural facility for the manufacturing of oil and gas components for the sector and boost economic activities in Cross River State. The Nigerian Content Development and Monitoring Board has unveiled Brent Plus, a series of initiatives that will stimulate innovations in the oil and gas industry and ancillary sectors and create a platform for local creation of digital technologies. The Executive Secretary of NCDMB, Simbi Wambote, unveiled the Brent Plus during a webinar titled Innovating for the Future of Nigeria's Oil and Gas Industry and its linkage sectors. He listed the processes of Brent Plus to include problems, definition, call for innovation, Nigerian oil and gas technology hackathon, incubation, and scale-up. The federal government has inaugurated a technical committee to revitalize extension services in Nigeria aimed at stimulating technology adoption and aimed good agricultural practice towards improving food requirements and industrial expectations. The Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development, Mohammed Sabo Nanano, while inaugurating the committee, says agricultural development in the country is hinged on integrated approach to revive extension advisory services. The minister charged the committee to design a system of training agricultural extension workers in the next 2 years and to recommend measures for the upgrading and retooling of of extension training institutions across the country. Let's quickly keep you up to speed with what's happening around the markets. The Nigerian equities market maintained a positive outlook on Wednesday as the all-share index was upside by 1.03%, as you can see right now on your screen. The year-to-date loss currently stands at 8.9%. The local bourse gained about 129 billion naira on Wednesday. Deals ended at 5,195. Investors take a total of 5.41 billion naira on 436.83 million ordinary shares. Meanwhile, the Johannesburg Securities Exchange earlier today in South Africa opened negative ahead of a key policy meeting where the central bank is expected to cut rates again. Talking about monetary policy, the main meeting for the CBN is also to hold, I think next week also, yes. The MPC of the CBN will be holding, we're expecting them to hold next week. The last one was done, you know, most reporters were in there. It was very unusual because of the times we are in right now. In the meantime, the South African Reserve Bank, that's their own central bank, the three-day policy meeting concludes with a press conference to announce its decision on lending rates. The bank has already delivered a 225 basis points worth of rate cuts to support the economy. What we've seen here in Nigeria is that the CBN cut interest rates on its intervention loans from 9% to 5%. There have been calls that interest rates in Nigeria should be cut. Let's see what the MPC will come up with in its next meeting. Globally, markets declined today as investors continue to monitor the reopening of economies and the coronavirus pandemic. Dow Jones Industrial Average, S&P 500, NASDAQ, all were in the red yesterday. That's talking about Wall Street. If we move over to the commodities market, Brent crude is climbing today. Yesterday, I did tell you that Brent traded at around $35 a barrel. Today is climbing, that's this morning, at 1.96% at $36.45 and a barrel. For our budget, the revised budget, according to the Minister of Finance, Brent crude price has been benchmarked at $25, but it's still not uhuru yet because the oil market is a futures market, is a forward market. It trades, you know, in the future. So perhaps what we've seen in the last few weeks or in the last 2 months or so will begin to set in. For gold, it's trading at $1,732 an ounce, is down nearly 1%. Cocoa, like I said earlier, is trading at around $2,400 a ton. Palm oil, crude palm oil, is trading at the international market. Yes, they trade it. That's palm oil you are seeing. Yes, they trade it $2,342 a ton. But Brent crude, see the price, that's $6. So why are we still depending on this? For the past how many years? Nigeria will be how many years? October 1? 60 years. And I'm less than 60. But I've been hearing of diversification since I was born till now. Anyway, let's quickly take a break. When we come back from the break, it will be time for us to get cracking with our conversation. Dr. Olusegun Omisakin, the chief economist at NESG, will be joining me. We'll be breaking down all of this. Is there really a light at the end of the tunnel? What are we going to be passing through? As we're passing through this tunnel, what are we going to be feeling? So we'll be looking at all of that. But you can interact with us, as you can see right now on your screen, on all our social media platforms. Facebook, we're there. Moneyline with Nancy TV. You can check me out on Twitter, also at Nancy Ilo. Drop your comments. I did mention earlier, tell me what you're spending your money on. Is it food? Is it data? Is it electricity? Is it transportation? Whatever you're spending your money on, please do tell me. You are part of the 40 trillion naira as released by the MBS just a few days ago. On Twitter, you can also find the show at Moneyline TV. On Instagram, Moneyline with Nancy TV. On Instagram, find and follow at Nancy Ilo. On YouTube, Moneyline with Nancy TV. You can check out the show. This show is streaming live right now on YouTube. You can watch previous editions also. On our website, www.moneylinewithnancy.com, you check out business updates, the latest news around the world. So those are our social media platforms. Like us, follow us, share, subscribe, tell a friend to tell a friend. Is Moneyline with Nancy on Africa Independent Television and, of course, on COVID-19 Watch. We'll be right back.
The impact of the novel coronavirus pandemic has been felt in all spheres of life globally, including Nigeria, which recorded the first case of COVID-19 in Lagos on February 27, 2020. This development was followed by proactive measures by the federal government and the Lagos state government to curtail community spread of the virus by imposing a 5-week-long total lockdown, which was later eased on May 4th. However, since the gradual easing of the lockdown, small businesses are struggling to get back on their feet, having been hardly hit by the lockdown and many not knowing how best to sail the stormy waters of the pandemic. Renowned economist and chief executive officer at Cowrie Asset Management, John Sichuku, while speaking in an interview with Nnaji last week, had advised small business owners to devise multiple means of generating revenue to remain afloat through the crisis.
Okay, I think the first decision any leader should take is you have to look at your sources of revenue, which is the top line. You have to ask yourself, this source of revenue, is this sustainable? Should I diversify my revenue sources? And my approach should be that everybody who is any business operator who is operating in a third world economy should ensure that you have multiple income sources. So you need to, as a leader, you need to ask yourself, how will my line of business be impacted on by this COVID-19 induced crisis? Am I still going to be able to sell my products to my consumers? Or should they, you have to look at your channel of delivering service to your consumers. How do I optimize my channel of delivery of services or products so that I minimize my costs? In a period of low sales or low revenue, one of the focus of management should be on cost optimization or cost containment. You have to look at what are those discretionary costs I'm currently carrying that I need to set back or to eliminate.
But with over 5 to 6 weeks of business activities and production lost, how are these small and micro businesses faring? I will be speaking to some business owners here in Area 10 to find out how they are coping with the lockdown so far.
Past 5 weeks now, we're on this lockdown. We businesses, we are suffering a lot. We know that our government are trying to help us to put the country in a better way, but seriously, it's suffering, we are suffering. Business are locked down, everywhere is locked down. They said they will give us food, no food, nothing. So I'm on the road, hawking on the sun, not that we don't have a place to stay, not that we don't have shop. We have also shop inside the plaza, but they lock everywhere down.
They are still on the street now. It's not easy for us. So I think it's affecting us serious. But if government can do something about this coronavirus, so that we start back, we go back to our normal business. I cannot give any specific amount because I know that generally we have lost a lot.
Actually, it has been very hectic to us. If you watch here is Area 10, because we shot some days before the announcement. So it has been struggle upon struggle. So when you look at some of us here, our goods are hanging up, and we have lost many things. In fact, for here we lost millions upon millions. So we are pleading government if they can help us, if they can help us to give us loan and give us time to pay. And when they locked down here, there was no palliative to us.
The only thing I would say that the government will kind of assist us. If they are like the way I was told that other places, there's not a safe city. They open markets 3 times in a week. If they can open in a city, maybe 2 times in a week, I think it will be easier for us.
At least the little money they said they will pay. Let us pay at least some people that doesn't have fun to eat. Let them eat.
This is UTC Shopping Complex Area 10, where the traders have been evacuated from their shops in the shopping complex and are currently trading in the streets. And from the responses we have heard, these traders are lamenting the impact of the COVID-19 on their businesses and are urging the government to save their livelihoods in as much as the government is trying to save the lives of Nigerians. The government has thus been urged to speed up the reopening of the economy to ensure that businesses do not suffer and to ensure that opportunities are open for these businesses to flourish and ensure that the economy does not deteriorate into a recession. Helena Olori reporting for Moneyline with Nancy.
Thank you, Helena, for that. The question is, the economy will be recessed, but how deep will it be? And perhaps how short-lived or how long-lived will the recession be? Joining me right now is Dr. Olusegun Omisakin, the Chief Economist at NESG, Nigerian Economic Summit Group. Doctor, good morning to you from Abuja. How are you today?
I'm fine, Nancy. Good morning to you too.
Good morning. Let's get started. Like I said before you came on, we will be looking at the macroeconomic update. I saw the report which the NESG released just a few days ago, the macroeconomic outlook update, COVID-19, global oil price, and the Nigerian economy. Will be coming to that in a bit. We'll also be talking about the poverty report as released by the National Bureau of Statistics a few days ago, and the consumption expenditure report. So we'll be doing that at least in the next few minutes till about 12 p.m. Let's get started. The Nigerian economy was already struggling to shake off the 2016 recession effect before the coronavirus pandemic hit. As an economist, give me your own perspective of the quantum of the challenge that we have facing us right now.
Yeah, thank you very much. We all know what has happened to the economy is global. The problem is unique in that over some years ago, the Nigerian economy has always been impacted with respect to the external shock from oil market. So when you have the oil market going down, we'll be impacted. And if you trace every history of our recession, a significant number of them happens to be around the oil market. But what we are experiencing now is global. It's not only affecting the oil market, it's also affecting every segment of the economy. So we expect the impact to be huge. You've seen different projections from domestic and global research institutions. We are talking about main livelihood being impacted negatively. We're talking about people having been restricted from traveling. We're talking of total shutdown of the economy. So we expect the impact to be very, very huge.
Okay, since you said that is not only unique to Nigeria, because we're seeing what's happening globally. The global economy is already in a recession. Let's take a bit with the global economy. See what is happening in the United States, for example. I think the United States has the highest number of cases right now of COVID-19. We're looking at confirmed cases close to 5 million or even more than that right now. How much of a disaster is this for the U.S. economy that we've seen over the last few months or years have been, on a trajectory of growth, a trajectory of almost employment for all? And coronavirus pandemic just came and everything just dived down the drain. We saw more than 32 million people filing for unemployment in the U.S. How disastrous is this for the U.S. economy?
Yeah, so when you look at the U.S. economy, America has been leading the world, not simply because of its capacity to lead global growth within, but because of its strength to also leverage on the emerging markets to grow, and most importantly, China. Over years, you've seen how the role of China has been very, very critical in the global economy and politics. Now, the U.S. is not only being affected domestically, as I said, it's also being affected by its reliance on the economy of China. China, yes, of now is now picking up, and you can see what the signal you are receiving from the U.S. economy with respect to the determination of the president to reopen the economy. And so the problem isn't just about them. Whatever happens to the U.S. economy is a signal to what will happen to the global economy. And historically, anytime you have the global economy descending to something around 2.3 or 2.5 GDP growth rate, that signals a serious recession for some weak global economies. So what we see now is the hope. If the U.S. economy picks up very drastically, which could be, we can't rely on that because of the current case that they are facing and the rate at which people are dying there. If the economy picks up, that could be a ray of hope, and combined with what you have in the OPEC countries. So things are not just clear, even for the best economy in the world now. But it's a recession that we are all looking at. The best thing that any economy can do is to start planning about how to dampen that period.
Okay, how much of this recovery how much of the global economic recovery will depend on the U.S. and will depend on China? Because China's Q1 GDP numbers came out in the negative. I think about 6.8% if I'm not mistaken. So how much recovery will depend on the U.S.? How much recovery will depend on China, the two biggest economies in the world?
Yes, you know, before this period, the IMF projected that the global economy will grow around, I think 3.1 or 3.2. And you could also see that before this period, the global economy has been very sluggish, given the weakness in the developing and the emerging market. In fact, before the COVID-19, China has been struggling internally with its economy. And so that has also been impacting on the US. And even Nigeria, we just came out of a recession around 2017. So, and if you look at the statistics, you will see in the case of Nigeria, our economy seems to be going down in 2019, even before this problem. So the hope of the world hangs primarily on the domestic capacity of China and the US to bounce back, not just bouncing back, but bounce back quickly. But if you also look at the PMI statistics around the developed countries, China, the US, Japan, UK, Germany, and the rest, you will see the downward trend that, and that signals a serious or a kind of a persistent period of this recession caused COVID-19 might take the world. So for now, it may be very difficult to give out statistics, but we just hope that these two countries will get it right and getting it right faster.
Now, you know, I'm deliberately sticking with those two countries because even before the pandemic, we saw those two countries fighting. They've been fighting for like over 2 years. President Trump, Xi Jinping, no, I go Grio, no, I no go Grio. We saw the phase one deal coming into fruition just before the pandemic. So still sticking with these two economies, how do you think that these two economies will influence the world vis-a-vis that this idea of globalization, COVID-19 is throwing it out of the window? If you take a look at China, we see China is the manufacturer of the world as it is right now. So what this pandemic has also taught other countries, including Nigeria, is that we should depend less on some of these countries, especially for what we can produce here. So what kind of lessons are we seeing, especially from those two countries, in terms of globalization? Are we going to be seeing this nationalistic tendency which President Trump has been campaigning since he came in, affecting other emerging countries and such as us?
Obviously, Nancy, globalization is under threat and serious threat for them. Before the COVID-19 outbreak, pandemic, you could see the signal from the US that the US wants to try as much as possible to reduce their reliance on the economy of China. I don't see the same signal from any part of the world, especially the developing countries, that we are not surprised at that. Everybody is relying on China. But if you look at what has happened now and the signal from the European countries and some other developed economies, everybody is trying to, not about being nationalistic in view, but being looking inward and saying, let's determine our life by ourselves. Look at what the US is proposing, or is already telling the WHO that it's going to withdraw permanently the support. This signals a kind of a situation where the US sees that we cannot continue to rely on China, and President Trump has also started this move before this outbreak. He's been telling its own people to come to the US to come and produce, to have the capacity to employ the US people and to just have internal, solutions to what they are facing. This will have implications for the global economy, especially for the developing countries. My concern is not really about those two countries. They have attained some level of growth and development that can be sustained even if you have to go into breaking down globalization. My fear is for the developing countries. My fear precisely is for Nigeria. As you rightly said, all our machineries, everything that we import, we should just not call them import again. We should just call them China. We depend solely on the economy of China. We depend solely on the economy of foreign. And that is a big problem. So whatever comes out next globally will be a bigger shock for Nigeria. I hope that we'll get out of this problem very soon, Nancy.
You know what I just remembered, Dr. Olusegun, when you were speaking, that we shouldn't just call it import, we should just call it China, because that's what it is, you know. So I remembered President Trump in most of his press conferences. If you ask him a question, he say, go and ask China. Or he just termed it, is the Chinese virus. So China, China, China. But like you said, the lesson and where the concern should be is developing countries such as us. When do you think, okay, let me put it this way. When will the economy of Nigeria, that's what period are you looking from, when did we close down? I think in March or so. From March till about now, or as we move forward, how worse will the economy be? I know what I said, and I'm not an angel of doom, because the economy is already bad. Yes.
Exactly.
It's our statistics is fact. I'm not a politician, so we say it as it is. So from that March till now, or till as we move forward, how worse will the Nigerian economy be?
First of all, as I said, Nancy, if you look at the sectoral performance of the Nigerian economy before COVID-19, you'll be shocked to see that more than 2/4 of the economy is already in the recession period. So we're just going down, and we are struggling to come out. I'm not talking of coming out of recession. We came out, yes, but we were going down all over again. So this has had to a problem. So if you follow different projections, and I'll pick one for now, the IMF projected that the economy of Nigeria will decline by 3.4%, and we will come out of it in 2021 with 2.4% rate. Again, this was done when the oil price was still around 30 something, or 36 or 37. So the projection now, I hope that the IMF.
Okay, let's take a break.
Then we project that the Nigerian economy might go into recession this year by about -1, and if we are proactive enough.
Okay, I think we should take a break. Let's take a break at this point. Dr. Omisakin, if you can hear me, let's take a break. Let's reestablish connection again so that we can hear you smoothly. We'll be right back, but don't forget that you can join the conversation. The conversation is getting interesting. We're looking at the macroeconomics, talking about Nigeria. We'll be looking at consumption expenditure pattern. Where do you fall? I've been seeing some comments on Twitter already, people sending me where their money is going to. I would like to get to know more. Let's quickly take a break. Join us on all our social media platforms. We'll be right back.
It is a crisis like no other. In scope, we are now in the worst recession since the Great Depression. We are experiencing a 3% contraction of global GDP, and 170 countries are going to see income per capita falling versus what we expected 3 months ago for 160 for them to go up. It is also very unusual as a combination of a health crisis and an economic crisis that is simultaneously a supply and a demand shock. And while we are accustomed in crisis to live with uncertainty, this time is the novel coronavirus new unknown we are wrestling with. Cash transfers, credit supports, changing conditions of servicing credits, they all matter. making sure that our financial system continues to function, it matters. And what we have seen is central banks providing ample liquidity, $8 trillion of fiscal measures. So our message is spend as much as you can, but keep the receipts. We don't want accountability and transparency to take a backseat in this crisis.
Good advice from the IMF managing director. Trillions of dollars spent and still getting spent this pandemic times. But as you spend, keep the receipt too. That advice is good, especially for our officials, because even the COVID-19 funds and all of that, money is coming from left, right, and center. They need to keep the receipts. Just before the break, I was speaking with Dr. Olusegun Omisakin, the chief economist at NESG. Dr. Olusegun, if you're there, welcome back again. We had to go to reestablish a better connection. But if you are listening to me, can you just readjust your camera well? You are off the focus, so we can't see you. So put it back where it was, the camera focus, so we can see your face. If you can do that quickly so that I'll come back to you and you land on your point. We have a few minutes to 12 so that we can finish this discussion. Okay, Dr. Segun, are you there now?
Yeah, I think it's better now.
Okay, is it better now? Okay.
Yeah, I can hear.
Yes, we can hear you, but we can't see your full headshot. Can we see your full headshot up to your shoulders?
I'm seeing it from my side. Maybe can you call me back? I could see everything from my side. I don't know. What's the
okay. I think we'll take a break again. And Dr. Segun is saying that he's seeing us from his side, but the picture we're seeing is not a very clear shot. Let's quickly. Should we? Okay, Dr. Segun, good. Okay, fine. I think it's okay now. Okay, fine, good. Okay, Dr. Segun, let me allow you to land on your point, the point you were making when I asked the question earlier. How worse will our economy be in days, weeks, and months to come?
Yeah, so as I was saying, I'd already given you what the IMF projected, and I said the projection was based on some assumptions that were still valid during the period. But given what we are experiencing now, we could see that those assumptions might not stand as it were. So what we have done at the Nigerian Economic Summit Group is to project the Nigerian economy based on key three scenarios. First of all, we look at the role of oil the price of oil in determining the Nigerian economy with the current measures, the palliative measures and the approach, and the current weakness in the economy among all the sectors. The Nigerian economy will decline by 4.1, and that happens to be one of the best scenarios that we could see. And the worst scenario is that if the oil price continues to decline or continue to exhibit this weakness globally, and the government approach also, if it becomes to be inefficient over time, and the lockdown continues, and the case of the COVID-19 infections and the rest continues in such a drastic manner, the Nigerian economy might decline by 7.5, and that happens to be the worst case scenario. But in all this, we are saying in the system, we are still going through the problem. Anything could change, either for worse or for the best, depending on how we are able to efficiently manage the impact, or how the global economy is also managing it.
Okay. Doctor, in the midst of all those downsides, are there still some upsides or pockets of upsides for us? Even in the midst of this pandemic, in the midst of this economic, cloudiness, let me put it that way, is there any silver lining? And if there is a silver lining, where is it coming from?
Well, that's a tough question. We are in crisis. So the best approach is to assume that
Doctor, we're still having a challenge with this network. Side effects of technology.
So,
Doctor, can you hear me very well?
Yeah, I can hear you clearly.
Okay,
I can hear you.
okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now. It's just that the picture is freezing. But go ahead.
So I'm saying it will be very difficult for us to see any hope, even though we know there will be hope. But our hope will hang on, first of all, the extent to which the COVID-19 pandemic continues. Second, the extent to which the global economy picks up, especially the developed economies. And third, the extent to which we can domestically manage our resources and efficiently dampen the impact. Those are the three main factors. If you miss any one of them, it elongates the period of recession. If we get all of them right, then we can come out pretty soon.
Pretty soon. When will that soon be? When will that soon be? Are we looking at later this year or next year? Or some have also said even 2022.
Yeah. We are, as I said, we're in a period of crisis, and so projections will always fly around. It depends on which side you are. But looking at the data, which we believe at the Nigerian Economic Summit Group that the data should speak to itself, looking at our antecedents, at the way through which we've been able to manage the past crisis, and looking at the nature of this pandemic, we don't see the Nigerian economy coming out of recession this year. As a matter of fact, we see us managing to come out next year, if not year 2022.
Yeah, because this is a different kind of crisis. A different kind of crisis. Like the pandemic, this coronavirus crisis added to the, we were already at the bottom before, but it's taking us deeper. We're trying to raise our head above water, but now it's plunged us back into the river. Let's talk about the NBS consumption expenditure pattern that was released, the living standards, that's income and consumption, which they look at. The consumption pattern, according to the NBS, says is the combination of qualities, quantities, act, tendencies characterizing a community or human group's use of resources for survival. Nigerians spent about 40.2 trillion naira on household expenditure. Speak to me about what you think about that report. Of course, that covered a year from 2018 till October, September 2018 to October 2019. So me, you, every other person watching us right now, our money is inside that 40.2 trillion naira. Can you break it down a bit for our viewers, what it means?
Okay, so the data, of course, is not surprising, kind of. But I think when you compare what we are doing now with where we've been before, then you will see some changes. So the first one is that what a nation consumes, whether on food or non-food items, also signals the economic welfare and development of such a nation. So whether most of what you spend now happens to be on food or on other items that are not food, that is clear. But I think what is interesting to look at from this statistic is that this data also reinforces the existing, also highlights the existing problem that the Nigerians are facing. So our problem is not just that we have this weak capacity nation. We also have a line of everything, whether consumption of food or consumption of non-food, and we see others at the top. So we could see the role of states in driving the welfare of people. And we also see that it's interesting to know that most of the regions or states that are doing fine in terms of the economy generally seems to spend some significant amount of their income on education, which is very interesting. And so you could see also when we talk later about the poverty, the link between consumption on education and the poverty rate. We may not be able to establish the direction of causality, whether people are poor because they don't spend on education, or people are not educated. That's why they couldn't. So we can't establish, but there's a clear link that the Nigerian economy that we all talk about and that we all see as one is not one. We have economies under economies, and that's a very vital information to go with.
Yes, I like the way you succinctly put it right now. The Nigerian economy has one, but there are still economies, and there are still economies within Nigeria. And perhaps Lagos is also towing the line in terms of number one, in terms of Lagos has the least poverty rates. Lagos also spends more on non-food items. So let's go to states that perhaps spend so much on food and non-food items like education, like transport, like other things. Okay, I can see that data right here in the studio. If we can put it on, we see that Lagos is spending the total expenditure out of what we're discussing. Lagos is spending close to 5 trillion, yes. The percentage of total expenditure is coming in from Lagos at 12.6%. And that the highest percentage of that 12.6 goes to non-food. Oyo is close. Delta State is also there. Number 4 is Rivers. Number 5, Kano. And I would say that Kano is the only state in the top 10, only northern state. What does this data tell us, Doctor, about states' household expenditure?
The state's household expenditure actually talks to the final consumption of people in different states. And, if you look at the composition of GDP, you have income, you have the consumption part of it, you have the investment, you have the government expenditure, and you have the net export or import, as the case may be. But consumptions happen to be very key globally everywhere because it also signals your capacity to earn. So the more you earn, the more your income, the more you spend. That's not just the story. The question is how you spend also matters. So how you spend matters on the state of welfare and the state of development. So you can have states who spend more on food, and you could have another state who spend more on maybe non-food. That signals what is happening because as you grow, yes, food is vital, food is important, but you begin to migrate from just your ability to wake up in the morning and say, all I want to do today is to eat. So Spending so much on food signals, comparatively, signals survival mode for many states. Spending on food signals also a kind of a movement for some states. For instance, if you look at Lagos, people are always saying that Lagos alone in itself is a country, it's on the economy. That in the whole of Africa or West Africa, it could be around the third or fourth or whatever. You can't compare what is happening in Lagos to what is happening in some of the northeast states. So this is clear that the role of subnational is very key. We've always been talking about this. You know, Nigerians are quick at discussing national, federal statistics, federal data. Oh, the government. When people say the government, they refer to the president, the ministers, the senate. We don't look at the state level. We don't take our governors and the rest. We don't look at them and say, what are you doing? Most of the Nigerian states are just managing to earn and to pay the same thing. Many people are depending on allocation from the federal government. Many of them are also not really depending on IGR. There are many of them that don't even have the capacity to earn. And if you look at their budget, look at the size of recurrent expenditure, look at the size of capital expenditure, you will see that many of them are just earning to pay if they have the capacity to pay. As a matter of fact, you have some states that have been their workers about a year's salary. In such a situation, you can't really see any development. You will see people living every day to eat so that they can survive.
Doctor, can you link this consumption expenditure pattern with the poverty reports we've seen? Because with the reports that I have here, the total expenditure combined by state, like I said, we've seen the top 10. Then the other states are coming at the bottom, where you see a lot of northern states. And it's not about being political or you just want to stigmatize, not really stigmatize or, put a certain kind of color on a certain region of the country or not. But there's a link between what we're saying, consumption expenditure, as well as the poverty report as released by the National Bureau of Statistics. What I also saw from the report when I read it is that in rural Nigeria, consumption of food takes about 61%, while in the urban areas, it takes around 51%. So how do you link this up? And the B part of the question is, are our states taking this kind of data seriously? Because you said earlier that we so much, give attention to the central government. So some of the statistics and data, I guess, even if some of our governors have even seen this, they will say, no, they are saddled now with coronavirus fights. Everything now is coronavirus, excuse. But I hope you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I do. And you are very right. You can, people can, it's like that everywhere. People discuss sentiments, not necessarily, and not really the data. So, but if you base your discussion on what the data is, unfortunately, we are not even the owner of the data. We are just consumers. The NBS released the report for a purpose. It's not just to accomplish their own KPI. And it's not just for the researchers to just come out and start doing analysis and do trending and the rest, and people just come with graphs. It is meant for the government, from the states, from the federal government to the state level, to look at this data and examine it properly and chart a better way forward. We should have a better way of consuming data. Data isn't just about 50% of people that are doing it, 10% are doing it. If you look at the states, and if you look online, Twitter and different social, you will notice that people don't even know whether this data exists, unfortunately. You can know because you talk about it. But how many of our policymakers are sitting down and say, man, this data is terrible. What can we do about it? So going back to your question, there is always a very strong link between consumption and poverty. So people are poor because they don't have access to basic needs of life. So they cannot consume what they don't have. Then if you don't consume, then you become poorer again. So you keep getting poorer and poorer. if you look at what happened with the global data, where Nigeria was termed the global headquarter of the world or something like that, the situation appears to be getting worse now. Mind you, this survey was conducted, I think, 2018 to 2019. So what we are seeing now might be different from what we have, already, and what will happen after COVID-19 will even make that data to be, to be worse, kind of. So if the people cannot eat, if the people cannot work, if the unemployment rate is so high every minute, you don't expect a magic from the data on consumption and poverty. And you keep seeing the trend. And if you look at the states that the states that are at the bottom line of the poverty index, you see these are the states that consume less, especially on non-food. So there is strong correlation going out there that I think the government needs to pay a very serious attention to for policy purpose.
I need to call out some states. Let's call them out by their names according to the data and the statistics, because it's not about data, it's not about statistics. There are human faces to this data and there are human faces to these statistics, Just like I said, a lot of northern states, of course, the northwest part of the country, the poverty incidence is more than any other part of Nigeria. Even on the southern part, Ebonyi State is sticking out as the sore thumb. We also see neighboring Enugu states. We're seeing, and I must say, let me tell our viewers that according to the MBS report, 4 out of 10 Nigerians are said to be poor. So 40% of Nigerians are poor, putting the figure at about 82.9 million people outside Borno State, because MBS did say that they couldn't conduct a survey there because of the environment, the terrorism environment there. So if they had been able to conduct, perhaps that would have been worse. Let's not also forget that Nigeria is the poverty capital of the country. So let's try and call out some of those states that aren't doing well in terms of poverty. And where my question is leading to is that these governors, some of them have been there for 2 terms. They've been having allocations from Abuja every month. This pandemic and oil price crash would lessen that. But the kind of question we should be asking right now is, what has happened over the last few years? It's not even just during this Buhari administration, because the poverty rate is there and it's climbing.
Yeah, I think the problem is, again, and I think it's always good for us to start the advocacy around states' economy. Most times when even the policymakers, when they look at the data, the first thing they want to look at is the aggregate on the national level. But in the real sense of it, we are talking about poor people. We are not just talking about poor data, as you said. So to say 40.2 millions of Nigerians are living below the poverty line, you may not really appreciate it. But if you go by states and you see the disparities by state, so if you come to think about 4 in 10, so if you go to another state, the story will change. That shows where the Nigerian economy, the problem with the Nigerian economy. It's not all about let's get a particular type of the president. It's good, but globally, wherever federalism or whatever is practiced, people's life depends on the welfare and the economy at the local level, not at the national level. So if you sit there in Lagos and somebody tells you that 4 in 10 people are poor, and you say, okay, what? And you are used to the Lagos data, you might likely say, no, that's not true. But that's the truth. So what I'm saying to that effect is that it goes beyond telling the governors what have they been doing, what have they not doing, but we should also look at the structure, how the states are structured.
Okay.
What are the opportunities? What are the economic opportunities that are living alone and rushing to Abuja to collect their own part of the federal allocation? What type of structure is put in place that encourages them so that people neglect that and they go for fresh money? I think this has been part of our problem for decades. And the more we neglect that, the more we keep getting ourselves in this massive inter and intra-state inequalities and differences. But we are still one Nigeria. So I think the capacity of states to grow, to look at internal growth, and not just idea, because when you talk about the state's economy, people quickly think about the capacity of the governors to get taxed and get money and fines and all those everything from their people. It goes beyond that. If the people are poor, you are going to get poor idea. If the people are rich, you are going to get good one. So the problem is to identify the look at what is happening in agriculture, look at what is happening in technology and the rest. We should be able to have free mind to tell ourselves, what if I'm not going to go to that Abuja in the next 3 or 4 years? What is going to happen to my people? What is going to happen to my budget? If you look at the national debt and both state and the federal, you'll be amazed that at the state level, a lot is going on that people are not paying attention to. So people just look at the president, they talk about the president, talk about the senators. But let's talk about the governments. Let's talk about those lawmakers at the low level, and let's see what opportunities do we have to enhance our capacity to produce and then to reduce poverty among our people at the state level, at the government level.
Okay, I think we'll leave it at that, Doctor. Thank you for your perspectives. We'll continue to look at this and break down these numbers, especially now that we are in the middle of this pandemic. We need all hands to be on deck, get all this data, and government should also plan according to this data, isn't it? Yes, they should plan according to this data. Thank you very much, Doctor. Thanks for joining us today.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
All right, I've been speaking with Dr. Olusegun Omisakin, who is the chief economist at the Nigerian Economic Summit Group. We've been looking at a lot of things: the macroeconomic update as released by the NESG, COVID-19 impact on the Nigerian economy, the consumption, and the poverty report. Just a few minutes to 12, we were talking about poverty earlier on, but there is also a strong correlation between education, occupation, and the gender of people to poverty. So the less educated females, that's women, are more likely to be poor, not holding top jobs. All those, all those variables add to an individual being likely said to be poor. And according to the NBS, 4 out of 10 Nigerians are said to be poor. 40% of people live below the poverty line of 137,430 naira a year. That is 137,430 naira a year. 4 in 10 Nigerians, about 82.9 million Nigerians, apart from Borno State. Borno State was not part of the survey because of the Boko Haram crisis. All right, just before I hand you over to the news studio, let's quickly take a few comments coming through on Twitter. Okay. Empire says, you said something a while ago on the breakdown of how we spent money on various food consumption from 2018 to 2019. Can you please do the breakdown here? I think we did a breakdown earlier, and I've been talking about it. Empire, just go to NBS, and you'll see the breakdown there. Friday says, I've been spending heavily on food and utilities. I've been answered your question. Help me ask our authorities, how long does it take us to tap into the abundance of solid minerals that God has endowed us with? Dimples on Twitter said, today's report was rather funny. You cracked me up, Nigeria, my country. I pray to see how Nigeria's economy bounces back to its normal points. That's coming from Theophilus. The normal points was not even good, so we should try as much as possible to get to a better point.